I went to an atheist service recently. Now, I know what you're thinking. An atheist service sounds like a vegan hog roast. And then I wondered, was it code for Satanism? Did they want me as sacrifice? But then I realised they only sacrifice virgins. Phew. In the end, it was all lovely. I told some stories, we sang some songs, and then a lady in a multicoloured knitted hat performed a rendition of Hey Big Spender with a kazoo. And then the host said, "Look under your chairs. There's a chocolate, a gift from us to you." I immediately opened mine. Just before she went on to say, "Unwrap it slowly and savour the taste whilst thinking about your dreams. Be mindful." Well, what could I do except rustle the papers and pretend I'd not already eaten mine? Now the ladies sat next to me were not fooled, even though I looked down, thoughtfully folded my hands and muttered a mantra. Turns out one of them couldn't eat dairy, so I got to eat hers as well. My sweet tooth has always got me into trouble. One rainy morning, my mum shouted in her Glaswegian accent, "Kids, get your wee bums down here!" Me and my little sister ran downstairs to be met with my mum holding a £10 note. She waved it around and asked us to go across to the village shop for milk, bread and toilet roll. Boring things. Now, the highlight of the village had to be the local shop. It was a mecca for renting videos and buying penny sweets. Now, I loved the village shop. It was great. All you had to do was ignore the rumours about the toenails in the quiche, and it was a beautiful shopping experience. We'd often go in there with 1 penny each and take a ridiculous amount of time choosing between a strawberry shoelace, a cola bottle or a mini marshmallow. We were easily pleased. Now back then we used to think, "God, our mummy is so generous." Now in retrospect I realise what a genius move that was, and a stingy one at that. We also believed my mum when she told us that our quick save non-branded shopping matched because we were a posh, stylish family. We believed everything she told us. She also told us that we had to be extra quick in the bathroom or the shite fairy would take us away. Now the sweeties that I always begged for were pink, sugary, bubbly bubblegum. We were never allowed bubblegum. It was strictly forbidden in the Passery household, and for a very good reason. We could barely keep it in our mouths. I lost track of the amount of times I had to have it cut out of my hair. So, we have a £10 note. Now this is a moral conundrum. Do we do as we're told? Or do we betray my mum's trust to live out our childlike dreams? Guess what we did? We went absolutely berserk. The world was ours. We were in possession of more money than ever before. Not so much money that we didn't know what to do with. I knew all right. I was going to buy pink, sugary, bubbly bubblegum, and lots of it. Now, if you're the right age to remember, then you'll know that bubbly was the cheap one. My dreams did not extend to Hubba Bubba or Bubblicious. So, me and my little sister held hands as we crossed the road to go to the village shop. We pushed open the heavy door and a rusty bell rang. The shop smelt dusty. Mrs. E said a big hello to us and we walked up to the counter, told her what we wanted and watched with big eyes as paper bags were filled with sweeties. Sweeties we were never normally allowed. Sweeties that Mrs. E needed the ladder for. Chocolate mice, strawberry bonbons, pear drops. The delicious, albeit forbidden list continued. We even got Mrs. E to put in a few blue sweeties. We really weren't allowed those. Perhaps we were being too risky. Are you sure your mum said all the money was for sweets? We'd been rumbled. I pulled my little sister to one side and whispered, "Listen, we've got to get something else to make it look more realistic. She knows Mummy wouldn't let us have more than one sweetie each." My little sister nodded in agreement. She was 3 and absolutely useless. I was on my own in this. I had to think fast. We shuffled back over to the counter and I did my best grown-up voice and said, "We'd also like to purchase 2 carrots and a bin bag." Okie dokie, sweetheart. We'd got away with it. Part 1, complete. Now, part 2 was a little more complicated. We had to explain this to our mum. Now, before we ran home, we stopped near a patch of nettles and we came up with a plan. Or I came up with a plan, because I didn't think a 3-year-old was ready for this level of deceit. I thought, what would a grown-up do? What kind of a grown-up could carry off a big lie with confidence? And that is when Lady Ilaria was born. So, we decided to tell my mum that on the way to the village shop that we'd bumped into Chris the farmer. Now, Chris the farmer had asked out my mum on a date a few weeks ago. We were buying sausages at the butcher van when he sauntered over trying to look all debonair, though we had just seen him remove his hand and arm from a cow's arse, so his hand and arm were covered in cow crap as he said the words, "Mary, I've seen you putting out the washing. Would you like to come and see the farm? I've got a bottle of red." She took one look at his shite-covered limbs, politely declined and said that she would be watching sharp. She put the sausages in her handbag and dragged us kids back across the road. Poor Chris the farmer. But we could use this to our advantage. I got my sister to tell my mum that Chris the farmer had said, "Look, milk, bread and toilet roll don't matter. Buy all the sweets." Because he was sad that he wasn't Mummy's boyfriend. This was a brilliant plan. There was no holes in this. Perfection. My sister and I high-fived, and with a twinkle in our eyes and a bag full of sweets, we ran across the road and went home. My mum listened to our lie, crossed her arms and said that Chris the farmer was on holiday. Oh, bloody hell. We were in for it now. "So, you've lied about Chris the farmer, you've lied to Mrs. E, you've not done as you were told, and you've spent my last £10. Right, that is it. I'm going to have to ring Nigel the policeman." She walked over to the phone and dialed Nigel the policeman's number. My little sister and I looked up at my mum, our big brown eyes filled with worry. My mum told us that this crime would send us to prison and that we were to pack a bag quickly before Nigel the policeman came round and took us away. We burst into tears. As a bargaining tool, I said that she could have all the sweeties, including my beloved pink, sugary, bubbly bubblegum. She thought for a moment before snatching the sweeties from my tiny hands. She went over to the phone and told Nigel the policeman that we were sorry and that we didn't need to go to prison after all. Now, Nigel did tell her, though, that if we didn't tidy our bedrooms, then he would be back round and we would definitely be going to prison. So we shoved everything in my wardrobe and under the bed. We would not cope well in prison. Now, that night, when us kids were in bed, my mum stayed up, watched sharp and tucked into the big bag of sweeties. Now, we might not have had milk, bread and toilet roll for the next day, but with each mouthful of those delicious sweeties, she didn't care. She told me the next day that I had made an excellent selection. This did not amuse me. The next day, when I was getting off the school bus, I saw Nigel the policeman dropping off his son at school. I considered hiding, but I thought, no, I'll do the right thing. I took a deep breath and I walked towards him. My new school shoes were squeaking. I was shaking inside. My face was as red as my Minnie Mouse book bag in my hand. I knew I had to do the right thing, or this life of crime would spiral out of control. I looked up at Nigel the policeman, all 6 foot of him, and said, "Nigel the policeman, I'm sorry for breaking the law. Thank you for not sending me, my little sister, to prison." Nigel the policeman just looked really confused and sort of let out a little laugh. Like, he didn't have a clue what I was talking about. Oh, all right, sunshine, just go and get yourself to class, love. Is that it? No extra warning, no, I'll be keeping an eye on you. Now that was something to think about. Had I given away my sweeties for no reason? Could my mother have actually lied to me? Well, this was betrayal. I spent the rest of the morning at school feeling very pissed off. Lunchtime rolled around and I opened my lunchbox to be met with a big cheese sandwich. And what was that behind the Satsuma? It was something beautiful. My pink, sugary, bubbly bubblegum. But only one. Well, the rest. Thinking about it that night in bed, I decided that Lady Ilaria had been right. Now, the lie was watertight. It was just that I lacked the acting skills to really pull it off. What could I do to improve them? Drama club. Now, I loved drama club. Now, my little sister was too young to go, and it was all new kids that I'd never met, which was great because, to be honest, I wasn't all that keen on the other kids in the village. They were all bloody weirdos. My favourite game was where we'd pretend to be monkeys. Now, I was an expert due to our family holidays in Flamingo Land, our favourite place in the whole world. It was Disneyland, but for poor people. There was a circus, a fun fair and a zoo where Albert the monkey lived with his wife Victoria. We would spend hours upon hours watching Albert the monkey sniff all of his mates' arses. My poor mum must have been bored witless. Now, Flamingo Land is in North Yorkshire and most people would only go for a day or a weekend at most. Now, not us. We'd go for a full week. It was cheap, you know, I told you, she's stingy. Now, the one thing that we didn't experience whilst we were there were queues. That was because my mum did the very smart but illegal thing of taking us off school for the whole week. Now, it was the past. Things like that were fine back then. Plus, we turned out all right. Not streetwise, but all right. Now, Flamingo Land never let us down. It always lived up to my expectations, though it did become harder and harder to ignore the rumours that Albert was a different monkey every year. I love Flamingo Land so much that I even made a 9-year-old family friend cry. Now, I was also 9 at the time, I'm not a monster. He'd got back from the Canary Islands with stories of his travels. I looked him dead in the eyes, folded my arms and said, "Yeah, but did you make friends with a monkey?" He had not. He went home and he begged his parents to take him to Flamingo Land. They were a posh family. They wouldn't take him. But don't feel too sorry for him though, because he's grown up to be a massive racist. It was all going great until me and my little sister had a near-death experience. We ran over to the helicopter ride. Now, I wanted to be the pilot, but I had to go on with my little sister, a child so assertive that despite being much too short for the rides, still managed to get on. She had this idea of putting her hair in a high ponytail and then putting her hood over the top. And then when the staff said, "Can we measure you?" she'd just look at them and say, "Are we really going to do this?" Now, she's a vet nurse now and is very good at it, but I'm sure that the animals just get better purely out of fear. So there was no point in arguing. She was going to be the pilot. We got into the helicopter carriage and all the staff came round to check that the children were safely in the ride before pressing the start button. Now, when the staff got round to our carriage, they realised that our safety door was broken. But instead of just telling us to go into another carriage, they decided to tie us in using a J-cloth. Even as a kid, I remember thinking, well, this seems fucking stupid. Surely it's a joke. But oh no, it was happening. I turned to my sister to exchange a glance of fear. She looked back at me, a face full of excitement. The ride went higher and higher. The ride turned to one side. my side with the metal door, and then the other side, the J-cloth side. God, J-cloths should not be used to stop children from dying. I felt the J-cloth begin to rip. I looked down at my mum, screaming, "Mummy! Mummy, help us!" She couldn't hear me and just smiled and waved. I was terrified. I was screaming louder and louder for help. My sister just threw her head back. She laughed with excitement. Her face was full of glee. The ride lowered down after what felt like an eternity. My short life had flashed before my eyes. I had to seize the day. I just didn't know how. We ran over to my mum. She was a bit confused as to why we were acting so differently to one another. I explained to her what had happened. My voice was all shaky. She gave me a cuddle and said, "Right, that is it. When is that wee bugger who wakes this slave? I will kick the living shite out of him." Now my sister, she pulled down her hood and became 5 inches shorter. She said, "No, Mummy, Ilaria's being a wimp. Don't tell them off." It was thrilling. We felt alive. Her eyes were wild and she looked drunk. My mum marched us over to the overpriced photo kiosk and demanded to speak to someone in charge. A bloke with massive ears and a pointy face was the manager, and he spoke in a way that made everything sound like a question. After a very heated discussion and many unanswered questions, he finally gave in and handed her some coupons for the restaurant and a stuffed monkey toy each. Our very own Albert the monkey to take home. No. I remember thinking it had all been worth it. Look, it had been worth it. See, all these experiences, they shape you as a person. I went into a school recently to do some drama workshops, and in the morning I got to be Ilaria the detective, but in the afternoon I was Mandy the monkey. Now, all of those years at drama club pretending to be monkeys, and then all the years at Flamingo Land watching Albert and his friends at the zoo, it had brought me to this point. I remember thinking, God, my monkey skills will be wasted on these children. But at the end of the school day, a little girl bounced up to me and said in her Mancunian accent, "Mandy the monkey, it is such a shame that you couldn't meet Ilaria. You'd get on so well." Thank you, Albert the monkey. Now, I went back to Flamingo Land quite recently, just for the day. Now, good news, Albert is still there. But for some strange reason, everybody kept calling him Tony.